So one of the stories that we have covered takes place in my home state and in my hometown of St. Louis, which was crazy to see a hospital that, because Kane and I are both St. Louisans, homegrown, it was wild to see a hospital that we've done events for and all this kind of stuff be involved in, I don't like this phrase, but this is what they use, gender affirmation surgeries and transitions, which it's just woke ease. It's gender mutilation. They are taking healthy kids and they're mutilating them to cosplay as a different sex. And this is not informed consent. And that's one of the big areas of concern that I just don't know how you can have a 13-year-old who can't get their ears pierced at the mall, if that's what kids do anymore, who can agree to get a serious life-changing surgery like this. And there are apparently a skyrocketing number of this. It increases, which is why Missouri's top lawyer, Attorney General Andrew Bailey, he's gotten involved. In fact, he's issued emergency regulations against these transition interventions for children. And he joins us now from the great state of Missouri via Skype. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us. Very good to have you. This really shocked me. And I don't know if it's because I just romanticized my hometown or if it's because it's a hospital and they help people, they don't hurt people. But then when you also begin highlighting the increase of number of these transitions, that is really troubling. This is an epidemic. Talk to us about what you've done to intervene.
Well, it's about protecting children for me. And so when we had a whistleblower from this clinic in St. Louis come forward several weeks ago and notify us of serious allegations of what amounts to child abuse masquerading as medicine, really it's a radical left-wing ideology that puts kids at risk, masquerading as medicine. We took action, we marshaled state resources, and we've launched an investigation. We're going to hold wrongdoers accountable because it's worth standing up and fighting to protect children. And if even 1/10 of what this whistleblower says is true in her sworn affidavit, then we've got a serious problem on our hands. And so given the allegations, we asked for a moratorium on these procedures as we looked into the matter. The clinic declined. And the justification for the clinic saying no was that they claimed they were the only clinic that offered these kinds of services in the state of Missouri. Well, further investigation has revealed that that's patently untrue. There is a clandestine and shadowy network of clinics like this all across the state of Missouri. Now, you don't expect this in places like Middle America, places like Missouri, but it is absolutely happening. Children are being put at risk. There are long-term and serious health consequences at issue here. And so we've got to stand up and push back and put safeguards in place to protect children.
One of the things that the Missouri Attorney General's that he's mentioning, this whistleblower that came forward to share everything that she saw going on at this clinic. I mean, use of puberty blockers, hormones to treat what they were describing as gender identity disorder. I mean, otherwise healthy kids who need no medical intervention. And I'm curious, too, I don't even know if there's been an ability to do a long-term study on what happens to kids that are subjected to this sort of hormonal abuse like this when they're so young and going through puberty. Nothing like that exists, does it?
No, and that's exactly the problem. That's why children are at risk. Look, European nations that are far to the left of America culturally, like Sweden, Finland, Norway, France, England, they've walked away from administration of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and ultimately irreversible surgeries in favor of treating mental health problems in the traditional method of psychiatry and psychology. Why aren't we talking to these kids when they come in? Why are we jumping the gun to puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and ultimately dangerous surgeries? Because we know that the FDA has not approved puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for this kind of treatment. And we know that these are dangerous drugs. They're experimental and they result in blindness, brain swelling, loss of bone density. These are irreversible, harmful consequences to this woke left-wing ideology masquerading as medicine.
Yeah, and with the parents as well, I can imagine too. I can't imagine any parent that would have their kid go through this, but surely there is some sort of legal deterrent. I believe in parenting your children, raising your children free from the government. That's not what this is. These are parents who are allowing their kids, and in some instances, it's parents that are kind of circumvented by teachers and even other medical professionals that encourage these kids to go through this without parental notification or consent. And there's like I said, no informed consent. If you're under 18, you can't be signing contracts, legal contracts. They're not binding. So how is there some sort of deterrent for parents who would be eager to put their kids through this to maybe rethink about the implications? Because there are minors now that are coming of age that are filing suits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, this is what motivated our promulgation of the emergency rule to protect children, because the allegation that the whistleblower makes in the St. Louis case is that there were instances where a clinician would be standing there with a parent trying to obtain parental consent, and the child was present, and the clinician would say things like, "Do you want a dead son or a live daughter?" and force the issue. That's not informed consent. That's coercion in favor of a woke left-wing ideology masquerading as medicine. And so our emergency rule requires true informed consent, where clinicians have to acknowledge the fact that these are experimental drugs. They're not FDA approved, and that other nations have rejected them because the risks outweigh the benefits. And it's about protecting children.
I was looking too, talking with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. I saw that you filed an updated petition in the case of St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, who became super famous around the country for a number of cases, not just the riots that were taking place in downtown St. Louis, but also the McCluskey case and more. Some of what's being reported, she created a toxic environment, failed to review police actions, and some of this is from your office as well. She also apparently doesn't have a lot of confidence from the people she's supposed to be over either. What is the latest in this? Because this is an attorney that has really done a disservice to St. Louisans, and I think has really undermined any faith in her office. I don't know how that can be rebuilt.
Yeah, we've got to restore the rule of law and find justice for victims in the city of St. Louis. This is a regional problem. It's affecting every city and county in that area. And she's unlawfully refusing to do her job. Instead of protecting victims, she's creating more victims. And really, that takes three forms. Number one, she's failing to prosecute cases of charges she files, and those languish on the dockets and are eventually dismissed. She's failed to inform and confer with victims of crime, which is both her constitutional, statutory, and moral obligation. And finally, she's failed to file new charges referred to her by the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, resulting in a backlog of somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 cases that are just sitting there, dangerous offenders going unaccounted for because she refuses to do her job. And we're going to stand up and hold her accountable.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't. 4,000 to 5,000, you said, a backlog of many violent offenders.
Absolutely. People are being hurt. People are being maimed. Things are being broken. It's chaos in the streets of St. Louis because she's unlawfully refusing to do her job. And that's what happens when you have a Soros-backed prosecutor who's an activist, not a prosecutor. I come from a prosecutor's office. I know what it means to exercise prosecutorial discretion. And it means you evaluate a police report to determine if you have sufficient evidence for a charge, what the charge should be, and ultimately what the disposition should be in that case. Yeah. Prosecutorial discretion is not authority to nullify laws that you dislike or disagree with. And this isn't about her being incompetent. She's crossed that threshold. Yes. It's the unlawful refusal to do her job.
And just like we've seen with New York City and in Chicago, I mean, there's a consequence for this, because when you're not doing anything to push back against the crime. So, I mean, I lived in downtown St. Louis. I lived blocks away. I was in Benton Park. I know exactly. I mean, we'd walk to Blue City Deli. We were right there by Hodak's. We were right there by everything. I mean, St. Louis, we could smell the hops and barley from the brewery waft across the highway. And even when I left in 2013, I moved to Dallas in 2013, and I could see the crime was already increasing. My neighbors, black, white, everybody was nervous. There were a lot of concerns, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And then with Gardner, then it just all fell apart. I was looking at the number of businesses, talking to Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey. The number of businesses, 550, have left, just in the past 3 years alone, have left downtown St. Louis. There is an absolute exodus. I couldn't even believe that Brown and Crouppen, I have their commercials memorized. They're leaving downtown St. Louis. That guy has an eye patch. He's been through it. They're leaving downtown St. Louis because the crime and the taxes, it's all awful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is an economic drain on the region, on the state of Missouri, and it boils down to this: safer streets equal prosperous communities. So we've got to restore the rule of law. We've got to find justice for victims, and that starts with my legal proceeding to remove the circuit attorney. We're going to hold her accountable for her illegal refusal to enforce the laws as written, and we anticipate victory. Look, since we filed this petition, there has been a wellspring of people who have come forward, former police officers, current police officers, victims of crime, who have a story to tell that add evidence to this case of her unlawful refusal to do her job. So it's time for the circuit attorney to go and for the rule of law and justice to prevail.
There you go. Last question for you. What does that timeline look like for her removal?
Well, We filed an amended petition 24 hours ago. We hope to be in court within the next week or two, and we're asking for a trial date this summer. The people of the city of St. Louis and the state of Missouri deserve clarity on this issue, and the rule of law demands that expeditious action be taken. We're going to keep our foot on the gas pedal and keep driving forward that ultimate goal of restoration of the rule of law and justice for victims.
Yeah, there you go. Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, we appreciate what you're doing, sir. Thank you so much for your time. It's good to talk
Thank you for having me.
Good to talk with a homegrown. Thank you.